Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. And my name is Lindsay Rockwell, and thank you for being here for Straw Dog Writers Guild 10th Annual Authors Showcase. We have an amazing offering of writers for you this afternoon, reading from their books published in 2023. I'd like to say just a bit about Straw Dog Writers Guild. Our mission is to support the writing community in Western Massachusetts by strengthening, engaging, and connecting writers at all levels of development through offering such programs as, on February 6th, we have our Writers' Night Out at Forbes Library. This will be hosted by Alexis Johnson. On February 10th on Zoom, Adrie Rose, who is also reading with us today, is offering a workshop on creating chapbooks. March 2nd, also on Zoom, Charisse Fisher, who is a local agent, is offering a workshop on how to write a query letter. April 6th, we're bringing back our Right Angles Conference. This will be held at the Northampton Center for the Arts. And for those of you who are interested, registration is now open. On March 8th, from 6 to 8, Susan Sensman will be at the APE Gallery in Northampton, presenting Writing Inside the Body, a workshop where the writer will directly engage with artwork. On Sunday, March 10th, from 6 to 8 on Zoom, the first of our monthly second Sunday virtual open mics. And that is a new offering that Straw Dogs is pleased to present. Every year, we have an annual Voices of Resistance event, which features writers from this community who engage their writing as well as issues of social justice. Our Writers in Residence program is held each spring at the Mount in the Berkshires. And we also offer an Emerging Writer Fellowship every other year. We're mostly a volunteer organization. We would love your involvement and welcome your ideas. You can support Straw Dog Writers Guild by becoming a member, by helping plan our activities, by making a donation towards our programs, or all of the above. A link to our website will be placed in the chat. Now I'd like to introduce Molly Moss, who is the Assistant Director of the Forbes Library. We're so pleased that you're here, Molly, and we thank you and Forbes Library for your generous sponsorship of today's program. Molly Moss.
Thank you. Welcome to everybody joining us today. Forbes Library is so thrilled to be co-sponsoring this with Straw Dogs. It was already mentioned that the Writers' Night Out is at the library the first Tuesday of every month. We have many events, and I'm going to put the link to our events calendar in the chat. One that I wanted to point out, though, is that one of our readers today, John Sheirer, is going to be at the library next Saturday at 1 o'clock. So if you like what you hear today, you can come hear more next week. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Molly. It is now my honor to introduce our MC for today's reading, Ellen Dory Watson. Ellen offers an inspirational presence to this community through her mentoring of many poetic voices, as well as her steadfast devotion to the art and practice of poetry. Ellen Dory Watson is hailed by Library Journal as one of the 24 poets for the 21st century. Her fifth and most recent collection is Pray Me Stay Eager, Alice James Books, 2018. The New York Times called her a master of the spontaneous moment, the merging and blending of consciousness, the delicious difficulties of relationships and questions rising from intensified experience. Her poems have appeared in the American Poetry Review, Tin House, Orion, and the New Yorker, among others. Ellen's honors include a Rona Jaffe Writers Award, fellowships to the McDowell Colony, Yaddo, Sakatar, as well as an NEA Translation Fellowship. She has translated over a dozen books from Brazilian Portuguese, including the works of Adélia Prado. Ellen has served as poetry and translation editor of the Massachusetts Review and director of the Poetry Center at Smith College for decades. Currently, she teaches at the Coleraine Manuscript Workshop, offers generative and critique workshops online, as well as freelance manuscript editing. It is my pleasure and my honor to have Ellen Dory Watson with us here today.
Hello, everyone. I was glad to be asked to do this, and I'm eager to hear everyone's poems today. And I think in the chat we have the list of the order, and I'm just going to name each person before they start. I think their bios are going to come up that way also through the chat, and then I'll just say a couple of words quickly at the end after they've read. Okay, so our first reader is Ann Pinkerton.
Hi there. I'm so happy to be with you. Thank you to Straw Dogs, and extra special thanks to Becky, who I am on right now. Thank you. This is my father. I'm at his house. Are you staying? Yes, oh, goodness. Okay, that's a special surprise. Hello, my name is Ann Pinkerton. This is my book, Were You Close? And it wouldn't exist if it weren't for Becky. So I just want to give a quick shout out to her, who hosted amazing writing workshops for bereaved folks like myself. And this book is about my brother David. I'm going to read the second chapter to you. I got more nervous when my dad came in. Sorry. This is called The Dot Stopped. In retrospect, the way David died was completely predictable. In a way, it was even poetic. If I had been writing the perfect way for him to go out, it might have been exactly the way it happened, except for the guesswork and worry. My musician husband Peyton was on the road in the middle of a national tour, but was playing our town on a Thursday in September of 2008. I was thrilled to see him and his bandmates, some of whom I'd been friends with for many years. Wearing a sundress to celebrate the leftover summery heat, I'd happily bounced into the club for sound check so I'd get a little extra time with everyone. I helped sling t-shirts at the merch table and danced through every song. The show was joyous. We gave goodbye hugs to the group and headed home for our one night together, high on the concert and the camaraderie. 20 minutes past midnight, our phone rang. We wouldn't normally have been up at that time, but we were wide awake that night. I looked down at the caller ID on the cordless receiver and recognized the number as my mother's. I showed it to Peyton, as if I needed him to confirm what I was seeing, because it was so odd that anyone, especially she, would be calling at that time. I didn't answer. The ominous feeling of getting a call too late momentarily paralyzed me. We looked at each other for a few seconds, perplexed. She hung up before the call went to voicemail. Seconds later, it rang again. That time I answered right away. "Oh, hi. I'm sorry it's so late," Mom said. "I wasn't sure if I should call or not. I don't know what to think." "What's going on?" I asked. "Well," she started and then hesitated. After a too long pause, she finally said, "David's missing." And then jumbled fragments of a story began to spill out. He was in Colorado with Cherryl and the kids, but they went home yesterday, and he stayed to hike some of the mountains on his own. She called Tommy when she didn't hear from him. Someone else has the GPS, I don't know, and well, it stopped moving. You know the little dot that shows where he is? It just stopped. I guess it hasn't moved in a while. She sounded nervous, but not too nervous. "They've called search and rescue," she said, "but it's probably too dark to look now." I did a quick calculation counting backward across the time zones, trying to get closer mentally. It would be 10:30 p.m. in Colorado. I sketched a fuzzy picture in my mind from the few details she had told me. My brother's girlfriend Cheryl, her daughter, our 7-year-old nephew Christopher, Tommy's son, had been camping with him on a trip, but now David was alone, likely on a mountain. He had a tracking device on him. Disparate members of the family who never spoke to each other directly were discussing things and passing them along like a bad game of telephone. It wasn't clear what the real full story was, but there was enough concern to warrant a search. The little dot on the GPS, the one that hadn't moved in a while, that was my brother. Mom said she'd call back as soon as she heard something more, and that she was considering flying to Colorado in the morning. She apologized again for calling because it was late, but we were up. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I'm holding my breath. That the way the dot comes in, that little dot that hadn't moved, that was my brother. That's an achy sentence if there ever was one. And now we're going to hear from Tzivia Gover.
Thank you. I will be reading from my book, Dreaming on the Page, and it's quite different than other things you'll be reading in that it's a guidebook for writers. It's a how-to. It's filled with inspirational quotes and prompts. So a little bit trickier for reading, but I decided to read just a little bit from the introduction, a couple of pages for you. And this little section is called Stating the Obvious, because sometimes it isn't. My idea of it, oh, no, actually, I'm going to read. A dreamer without words and a writer who dreams. My dreams took up the job of writing coach early on. At 21, I wrote in the artist's sketchbook that has served as my journal. My dreams give me advice on writing. They say, get the idea out first, then leave it for a day and come back. That's good advice for any aspiring writer. In that same journal, sandwiched between outpourings about friendship and descriptions of conversations about art that took place over games of pool, I wrote, I feel like my life is a novel and I am an English teacher reading too much symbolism into it. Over the course of a few days, I worked out what has become my Ars Poetica, an expressive statement of how dreams and writing connect in my life. I typed it up and used it as an epigraph for a staple-bound collection of poems I photographed and gave to family and friends for holiday presents later that year. It read, I am a dreamer, a writer without words. I am a writer, a woman who wants to share her dreams. I spent the next few decades forgetting and then remembering that insight about myself. Again and again through years when I worked as a journalist at a county newspaper in Western Massachusetts, then as the director of a poetry program I created for teen mothers, and eventually as an author and professional dream worker, offering workshops, classes, and sessions on dreams and writing, I have flip-flopped between seeing myself primarily as a writer or as a dreamwork professional. But part of me has accepted and integrated these aspects of myself all along. Starting in my teens, I have kept a continuous record in my journals of my dream journeys and literary aspirations, as well as my challenges and triumphs as a daughter, mother, friend, partner, coworker, and spouse. Articulating the connections between dreams and writing for other writers has shown me how important it is to nurture the twin sparks of dreams and writing. So that is the introduction that launches into this book that gives prompts and guidance and inspirational quotes to dreamers and writers, and specifically a method of combining the two of them that helps as the subtitle says, to supercharge your writing, to jumpstart your writing, and to open up a whole new source of inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tzivia. I love just the combination of dreamers and writers. Aren't we all both? And really liked the business of I feel like my life is a novel and I'm reading too much symbolism into it. I think that's something we all do, and yet it's not a bad thing to do. It's just to be conscious of what we're doing. Thanks a lot. Deborah Gorlin is next.
Uh-oh.
There you are.
Did somebody, I think my connection's unstable, but here I am. Everybody here with me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm very happy to be part of this writer showcase, launching the new book, and here it is, open fire. Just want to say, general introduction, that it's packed with lots of poems about different kinds of subject matter, plague doctors, Hitler's bathtub, fashionista with the crazy improbable name Isabella Blow, Emily Dickinson's white dress, rant against cremation, and on and on and on. But for today's reading, I decided that I would read some poems that are about my ordinary present reality, which is just to say the aches and pains of aging, which at my ripe old age of 72, I'm actively in the process of doing. So I'm sort of doing aging and writing aging. And on that point, I just want to make a general announcement that my husband, the poet Brad Crenshaw, and I are going to be soliciting and collecting poems about aging. So if you're willing and aging and interested, for an anthology of poems that will be published on the subject in 2025-26. So here are two poems about the subject. First one's called Fall Higher. The stairs loom these days. I take them as a matter of pride whenever I'm able, but I won't deny they daunt like a wager in poker, taunting water that rises up to my neck just as I emerge from it. True, I haven't yet failed to play each graduated key, the do, re, mi of their scale, but each step, like the pleats of a pitched, outstretched accordion, squeezes the blood and breath from me. So many staircases in my life, most of them saviors. 30 floors of the tallest building in York, where I worked, to circumvent my fear of elevators. Or the hospital's tart antiseptic landing that excited me no less self-importantly as I made urgent visits to my father, sick and dying again. Or the crammed pretzel-like stairwells in cathedrals in Italy, warning those at the bottom with heart disease to stop and promising the healthy others the crowning reward of bird's eye views of the city below, clear to the horizon. Of late, Harry Street, hundreds of steps, steep even by San Francisco standards. Achievement needs another metaphor. Dante, Led Zeppelin, heaven ever above. If we've gotten this far, we've arrived. Now, as I write, within the billions of spiral cellular stairs inside me, these rickety helixes, chemical treads are buckling. All too soon they'll collapse, bringing me down hard with them. My alpinist heart, my body falling and falling from the great bipedal heights already reached. And then this poem, which is the last poem in the book, I think rather fitting. It's called Aging in Place. Cows down the road, steady eddies, sunken in mud, plodding unfazed, whatever the weather is or his diagnosis, her blood disorder, still milking. The sun, even when hidden, those goats nosing the fence, curious in greeting whenever I visit. Stones in partial walls mossed over, softening lichen. And while the rusting harrow is useless, set on the grass for display, it is an instructive fossil. Blued, wild apples glow in the darkness, dimly electric. Pigs rest in their sties, enjoy them, and the horses, stanchioned, at least for now, are curried quiet. Worry can be made into warm sweaters. At least that, darling. From my kitchen window, the barn's red walls tilt like cards, and like my heart will break. And perhaps what's after, the clean sweep of the fields, maybe cover of rye to stay the soil from flight, under the wide open, no contest sky, and a horizon hard to make out, but hoped for, heaven already. Me, nowhere in sight, inside this gorgeous autumn, when the bright leaves clap wildly, uproariously, falling down, laughing.
Wonderful. If you're going to write about age, you got to get physical. And I just love the images in here, just one after another. The do-re-mi of the scale, of the stairs, and the accordion squeezing blood and breath from me. Wonderful. And next we have Dina Friedman. You're not unmuted.
Okay. Am I unmuted now?
I can hear you.
Okay. So this is my book, Immigrants. It's a short story collection. In some of the stories, immigrants are front and center, and the stories are about issues of immigration justice. And in some, immigrants are just a cameo or part of the story, because the purpose of the collection, or what I wanted to do in writing the collection, is to show how immigrants really interface in all aspects of our daily lives. So I'm going to read an excerpt from the last story in the book called The Fence. Rosie shouts and bangs on the window. Watch the fence! I tell her to stop because she sounds like a shrew shouting at these poor people as they pull out of Dr. Singh's driveway. Rose says she doesn't care if they think she's a shrew. Watch the fence! She yells again in this grating voice I didn't know lived inside her. It's like the cancer's taking on its own vocal effect, rattling against what should be the normal occurrence of cars pulling out of a driveway. And it's not insignificant that Dr. Singh is an obstetrician whose role is to bring life into the world. So these young mothers should be thinking about life and all its possibilities when they leave here, not about fences. You should care that you sound like a shrew, I tell her. And I'm wondering what these women see when they look at my wife through the window, some crazy lady with just a few remnants of hair grown back from the last chemo and those ugly brown spots on her skin, even though I hate myself for thinking these thoughts about my Rosie, whom I still love as much as I did the day we got married. Why won't she put the same attention she puts into the fence into maintaining her health and take the drug that will save her life? She hasn't budged on that decision, despite our 2 sessions with Melissa, the social worker, a girl with painted palm trees on her nails, who just nodded and said, yes, of course, every time Rose gave some bogus reason to justify her thinking. And when I said I loved Rosie and didn't want her to die, all Melissa did was nod her head. Of course you love your wife. So patronizing she was, talking to me as if I were a child instead of old enough to be her grandfather. What you're saying is precious and sweet, but you're not hearing what she has to say. Watch the fence, Rosie shouts again. From my observation, the woman in the tan minivan is nowhere near the fence, And what matters so much about this inconsequential object with its diamond-shaped links that separates the doctor's driveway from the thin line of sidewalk along our house that leads to nowhere except the garbage cans? If I were the fence, I want to ask Rose, would you be so watchful and protective of me? But this is just my narcissism speaking, something the social worker should have noticed if she were smart and knew the truth. All human beings are basically in love with themselves. Our love for others is merely a reflection of our own need for self-love. I still want to write my book about this, but lately I'm not so sure I'm right about narcissism because I would throw up for Rose. I would take on her pain if it meant she didn't need to suffer. So maybe I'm not the narcissistic schmuck I thought I was all these years. Rosie, have some breakfast. You haven't eaten a thing. I'm not hungry. My stubborn wife continues to press her face against the window, which is beginning to smear with the trickling rain. I'll get you a banana. I told you, Vern, I'm not hungry. She bangs on the window as another van creeps backward, inching excruciatingly slowly down the birth canal of this far too narrow driveway. Any dent generated in the fence would clearly be unintentional and not necessarily averted by Rose's shouting, but I wonder if perhaps the mirage of this mission might alter her resolve, give her a reason to stay alive, even if that reason can't be me. I slice a banana and put it on the table. Sometimes Rose will nibble at food if I put it in front of her, but right now she's too concerned with the next car, an aptly named Dodge Intrepid, going faster than it should be, angling far too close to the metal. Watch the fence, Rose yells. The side mirror gnashes against the mesh, making a loud nicking sound. Vern, go check. Make sure there's no damage. It's raining. I'll check later. No, check now so we can ask Dr. Singh who the patient is. If my wife weren't so sick, and if I hadn't resolved to be the too hard to die on perfect husband, I'd tell her to check the fence herself, because constantly inspecting this inanimate object, my rival for her affection, has become an irritating daily chore. But I remind myself that Rose's cancer is a challenge to see how selfless I can be. So I go out into the rain, not because I care about the fence or even care about Rose caring about the fence, but because I'm a narcissistic schmuck, just like everyone else on the planet. Thanks.
Thank you. I love that that's full of feeling and also humor. And I love if I were the fence, getting that close to it. And also that birth canal of the driveway was another favorite part for me. And now we have John Sheirer.
Hi, everybody. I want to thank Ellen for hosting, Becky for her great technical work, and all the other writers. Go out and buy their books. This is really great stuff. We have so many wonderful authors here. My book is, for now, 100 100-word stories, and you've probably guessed that it's full of 100 stories that are 100 words long. You may also guess some things about my kind of strange character and writing style from that. I'm going to read 3 of them. They're nice and short, which works really well for a 5-minute reading. And because we have Tzivia here today with her books about dreaming and the writing process, the first one is focused on dreaming, and it's called Dream Vault. Delia hadn't pole vaulted since high school, 46 years ago. But now, and random then, she climbed the air in dreams, toes grasping upward, sun highlighting her goose-flesh legs. Her dream slowed each time, just beyond the bar, muscles tense, vision locked on sky as she dangled above her future. Would she clear? Would she raise her fists in celebration? Would she plummet to victory? What really happened on that last vault decades ago at the state championships? Each time she woke when her heel clipped the bar. The fall back into sleep was sometimes deep, but more often elusive. And then this one is called Shoes. Johnson's dress shoes squeaked on the tile hallways at work like a toy in a puppy's mouth. It was worse on rainy days. He wiped his feet but couldn't completely dry the soles. New coworkers snickered when he walked by, also eyeballing the small stains on his tie and threadbare cuffs of his slacks. But his longtime colleagues ignored the clown-like noises and decaying wardrobe. Johnson himself knew his shoes squeaked. How could he not? But his wife had given him those shoes for Christmas 5 years ago. That was the Christmas just before her diagnosis, decline, and inevitable departure. And the third one, I'll leave us on a more upbeat note. This is called Retirement Party Speech. And I'm so close to retirement. And people ask me about it occasionally, and I give them a copy of this story. Retirement Party Speech. I'll be brief. I've worked here 46 years, and I don't remember the last time I looked forward to seeing any of you people. The feeling is mutual, no doubt. Hell, I don't even recognize most of you. You look like junior high kids to me. The only time you even notice me lately is when I empty my office wastebasket and you hope I'm quitting and clearing out. Well, you got your wish. Thanks for the party, I guess. Nobody turns down overcooked chicken and free drinks. But we all know the whole damn event could have been an email. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. I just have to say that I was particularly caught by the image of pole vaulting and that she's climbing the air in her dreams and just the whole idea of dangling above her future. So there's this whole metaphorical thing going on that's really interesting. Okay, now we're going to hear from Suzanne Rancourt.
Okay. Here's the book, Songs of Archilochus. You'll have to do your own research or buy the book, better yet, and you can read who Archilochus is or was. Epiphania. A linguistic break wall, round with stone syllables and vocables, gives shape to articulation we call water, a narrative wash, to cleanse the palate, to rinse earthly vulgarity spoken in abjection while present in the wandering. Bed down, with a forgiving cat curled up just outside the mosquito netting, free of regrets. Its curved purr induces a narcotic sleep. Sage, mistletoe, wild poppies, nettles, jasmine, and that blossomed purple flag wagging its erotic death spike at diaphanous linen robes. No human reigns forever, not even over one's own soul. Tell me, what is it like to stroll without a destination as winds stray feather? A lost thought that flutters amongst the ideation that Assyrian soldiers arrive as sound color, creating a tremor in foot trails too old to count the steps. Each stone pressed into fallen arches, their descent, a pineal well drunk dry. So, yep. This book does have a couple of Greek overtones. It's got a lot of other things too. I am using English pronunciation. Chamomile Agora. Rest easy, Parthenon warrior singers, in your marble presence along the walk to Odeon of Agrippa. The singing place where memories, odes, victories, and defeats bound by your slick innocence. Stoic in your pragmatic death, chiseled as fish scales. Poseidon's crescent lappings. Who were the sculptors here where Athena mourned, and Paul defended peace on the rock of Eris? The magpies land accordingly, set down lightly, bob from shoulder to trident to head, your muscular trunks petrified as your gaze scans steady the southwest fountain house, skims poppies that grow along the wall between the Judas tree and the sycamores. And then just one short piece. See, Archilochus was a mercenary, but he also was a naturalist, loved nature from the island of Paros. And he also was known for writing erotica. This, of course, is none of those poems. Armistice. I am a leaf in a flock of leaves that flutter to earth with soft patter. Through gray branches skinny with late summer growth and early autumn cover, an insulation of wings laid upon sweet grasses and worms. In a decision of wind, I take flight. In a gust of freedom, direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. A couple of things that really stood out to me. One was the articulation of waters, just, these things that we can go away with and think about. And also, what is it like to be the wind's stray feather? I love that as well. And insulation of wings. So lots to chew on. Now we have Cherryl Jensen.
Hello, and thank you for Straw Dogs and Becky for including me. I'm going to be reading from my memoir called Crazy Like My Mother. It's about mental health and trauma and alcoholism and other happy things, but there is a happy ending. So I'm reading from kind of the middle of the book. It's a chapter called, or part of a chapter called Shattered. We only get 5 minutes, Pam whispered in my ear. We were in the waiting room outside the intensive care unit of the hospital in Iowa City. It would be the first time my husband David and I saw Roxy since the car accident 2 days ago. Pam had called me at work. Roxy had hit an embankment on her way home from a party. No obvious reason. The weather was fine, no skid marks. She hadn't been wearing a seatbelt. Pam didn't know if she had been drinking. Roxy was 33 years old, but I still thought of her as my baby sister. She had always been the cute one, a little chubby with light brown hair and clear dark eyes. That family, Pam said quietly, pointing at a man with 2 girls, their mother is in a coma. The girls come every day and talk to her. She pointed to another family. Their son got his arm caught in a combine, she whispered. He's going to be okay, but he'll probably lose his arm. Each family had claimed their own spot on the round orange pods scattered out throughout the waiting room. Pam and D.A., David and I, my brother Dennis, and Mom occupied our space. Gray metal doors swung open, and a nurse stepped out, holding one door ajar. You can come in now, she said to the room, and all the families rose as one and moved toward the doors. I could see a wide, brightly lit hallway beyond. Are you ready for this? Pam asked as she walked beside me. I don't think there's anything you can do to be ready for it, D.A., Pam's husband said. I took a deep, shaky breath and held tight onto my brother's arm. The fluorescent lights buzzed in a steady drone as we entered a large room with several patients in elevated hospital beds with silver railings. The overhead lights glared. I felt as if they were blinding me. Everything seemed sharply outlined and assaulted my whole body like the sharp pricks of icicles. I shivered in the cold room, closed my eyes as if I didn't want to see what was in front of me. Each family went to their person. Roxy lay in the first bed to the left. Her head was swollen twice its normal size. A reddish purple gash curved from her forehead down the right side of her face and over her ear. The skin all bunched up and held together by large silver metal clips. A tube protruded from the top of her head. Beeping instruments surrounded the bed. I inched closer and grabbed onto the metal bed railing, cold and hard in my hand. Her head was shaved, except for a tiny light brown wisp at the nape of her neck. My eyes focused on that wisp of hair, remembering the feel of Roxy's silky hair rubbing against my shoulder as I carried her around on my right hip, almost from the day she was born. Dad joked that my hips would be permanently crooked. A steady hissing sound came from a respirator breathing for Roxy, each inhale and exhale lasting exactly the same few seconds, her chest going up and down in a perfect, unnatural rhythm. Her legs were encased in clear plastic leggings that inflated, deflated, inflated, deflated. They said we should talk to her, Mom said, coming up beside me, that maybe she can hear us. I touched her bare arm. It felt cold and heavy. I'm here. I kept my hand on her arm. I love you. Looking at Roxy now, I could hardly believe she was the same little girl I used to take care of. I had had only sporadic contact with my family since Dad died 4 years ago. I knew Bert, Roxy's ex-husband, was an alcoholic and that he abused her before they divorced. But I hadn't asked about the details. I had chosen not to ask. Knowing what was happening to my family felt like too heavy a burden to carry. When I went to college, I felt guilty for leaving the kids home with Mom and Dad. Then Pam left, then Dennis. Roxy was alone with them. Pam called me once when I was in college to tell me about Dad beating Mom. The same old story, and I couldn't do anything about it, any more than I could as a child. Eventually, years after I graduated from college and lived in Michigan, I stopped going home in the summer. And it dawned on me when I did go home for Christmas, I didn't have to stay in the Andrew house. My husband David and I would stay at a bed and breakfast in Maquoketa, only 7 miles away, but a respite from the tension, drinking, and fighting. Eventually, I didn't even go home for Christmas. Now, though I was only 5 years older than Roxy, I felt like the bad mother who had deserted her daughter. And look what happened. We walked back into the waiting room. I don't think she can come back from this, Dennis said, stopping midway to our seats and shaking his head. I started to tremble so violently I could barely stand. I sank down onto the seat, then burst into tears, my whole body convulsing. The tears came from the very depths of my core, like a river that had been dammed a long time and now could not be stopped. I couldn't remember the last time I had cried in front of my family. I was the strong one, the stoic one. David sat stiffly beside me. Pam walked over, sat down next to me, and put her arms around me. This is what happened, I thought. This is what happens, I thought, when you have a family like ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. There's something that happens at the beginning of that story that just rivets us into it, and that's the we only get 5 minutes. That simple sentence just gets it going, and we're holding our breath. And there's so much wonderful detail, like the wisp of hair that's a memory from so long ago. Really moving. And now Joan Livingston.
So Joan seems not to be on our screen today, so I think we need to move on to the next person, who is Jordan Hall.
Oh,
Good afternoon. My name is Jordan. That's true. This is my book, Mammoth, Massachusetts. I worked on it with Levelers Press. They are a fantastic outfit. I'm thrilled to be on their shelf along with the other authors they have. This is a collection of 20 short stories. I'm going to read not the shortest one, but it's only 3 minutes, so we can get all the way through it. There's some longer stuff. It's two halves, really. I'm very affected by the environment that I am around. I lived in New York City for a while. There's stuff about the history there. I tell the history of garbage through the eyes of pigs in Boars Under Bushwick. So that's the last chapter in here. And you'll have to wait for the full length for that to come out. But today we're going to read a short one called Diamond Heave. It's also illustrated by my good pal, CJ Gardella. Just some fantastic stuff that you'll get once you see. Here we go, Diamond Heave. You've heard of frost heaves, yes? Well, we've got the same thing, only instead of ice, we get precious crystals. They pop right out of the ground. Bet you didn't know that. Huge chunks of carbon ordered just the way our eyes like it. Diamonds of every color and clarity, ruby, opal, sapphire, onyx, crystals, and metals of any tone. I myself have touched a 10-ton boulder of native copper, good for melting or gazing upon. Thanks to continental rifts pulverized by grinding ice, we got potentials for riches like you've never seen. The Duluth complex births unrivaled ore. Metals you've never heard of spawn from the Canadian Shield. Who knows what other pressures lie down there, what with the rift and all. I wasn't supposed to say anything, so you better not either. If word gets out about the loot up here, the regents find out I told you, we both got bigger issues than a few disfigured toes. We got to be quick about it when we go. We must be prepared. I will teach you how to look for them. The purest ones seem to be along the exact fault line, plus or minus 200 miles. Under the leaf litter of any sizable forest, you will find treasures. The centering of the western wing of the rift under Minneapolis and St. Paul tells much of why that spot was chosen by the early peoples. Scouts, we'll call them. Heralds for the rest of the races, if we can manage to stop killing ourselves in the march. Those priestly peoples were drawn here and to the rest of the pummeled lands. They knew to keep secret the vibration of home. If we had talked about the gems, the land would have been plundered. Instead, we were quiet about our riches, let the forests grow around them. What's a people like us got use for stones like that? So we left them. We swept all the beautiful debris to the side and filled the ditches with gold. We stashed ores as best we could. All was fine for a time. We continued to trade in food along the path atop the rift. Then they were spotted again, glistening in the noonday sun, reflecting all the colors of light. The ancestors tried to bury them, but the beautiful stones kept shimmying to the surface. If the science is right, the earth initially drew those elements to its core, then fused all those precious metals and gems. It is slowly giving them back. Some say we too crawled out of the earth, hatched ourselves. We keep thinking outward because we are called by the light. We crave it. We miss home, so we're trying to recreate the tensions and fury from inside the earth. That is why we burn so hot. We are hunting for our true place. Thanks.
thank you, Jordan. I love the mix of poetry and prose, and I love Diamond Heave is such a great combination of two words, and I found the piece really imaginative and inventive. I like the idiomatic voice too, what with the rift and all, something really jaunty and wonderful in that. Thank you. And now it's Lindsay Rockwell's turn.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with everyone. My new collection is entitled, excuse me, Ghost Fires, and that'll be in the chat. I'm going to be reading 3 poems. 2 of them will be from Ghost Fires, and one from, I think it's a new collection I'm working on. Note to self. I love how branch whittles blue, and everything that splays has roots. That breath arrives from green, and before that, nebula and muons. How snow holds leopard's trace, and day darkens after undressing sun. That arrows don't fly backward, and wind has no home. How memories glide winged, and kites rely on sky. I love the sound of the word horse, the animal she is, how she scares me, and I feel small, makes me remember I am. This woman's work. This poem is in honor of one of my patients' mother, whose son was killed by a train. That moon-mined night, beneath her lethal light, he lay. He lay down on the track. My womb's work, my day's sun, my blessing have, then gone. Did you know the world and trains could be so cruel? I am a lost country. Once I held a compass, knew a mother's north. Now the compass spins and spins, prayer wheel spawning saddest winds within my chest. There runs a movie through my brain, rivers me to moot. No matter where this skin suit sits, be it bed or pew, I was not there to offer a pillow, muscle the stealing wheels of metal's blade west, so they could not slice my son in half. I was steadying my hand to pour another drink. My pale peach apron pocket jingle jangling coins, the day's tips, sorry silver rounds. I am work, a vacant body on a bus. I am acres of empty bottles bobbing on still water. Look at me, my petals brown, my dirt dry. You see, I say I was not there. I am circling lampposts, humming hymns I'll never hear. I am matter, unmattering herself, worlds unblossoming. Excuse me, I'm gonna get a drink of tea. The end. Come midnight, the forest is gone. After that, only wind. You tell me what breathes beneath your pillow. But oh, the sun makes us cartwheel. And when the heart pumps hard and true, there is blossom, sun-sweetened orange and red, its aperture open wide, holding gently our eyes. You tell me tender, again and again, kindly, do not swallow stones. One day no more hunger. The forest is gone, but always wind. You tell me why rhymes end in a lisp, a slur, a stutter, but then circumference, round defying round, its deliciousness floats, flaunts, nimble and righteous as a seed. You tell me the palimpsest speaks in tongues. The butcher has given up flensing, haunted by the shank, the haunch that bones beneath her pillow with sharpened teeth. You say, once wild horses, Wolves, monarchs, bees, elephants, unchained, moved every human to one, but only one, soulful tear. You say, when the orchestra swells, the firmament opens, we'll run, stilettos in tow, singing, hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. Thank you.
Thanks, Linz. One thing that gets me always is in this woman's work, the pause between phrases where what she's saying just can't come out, so she has to start it again and again. Also, that moon, mind, night, and skin suit are just two of the other phrases that just get me. And wind has no home, that too. Thank you. And now we have Howie Faerstein.
Thank you. Thank you, Straw Dogs and Becky and everyone else. This, I'm reading from Stay, the newest collection, with a great picture of a raven on Mount Tom. First poem is called Something Really Important Happened. It came out later that the Lord had revealed to the bedding salesman that one day he'd pray with a customer. I had moved west, leaving my matrimonial bed behind, and when I entered the sleep center to check out mattresses, this smiling drummer strode right up, hand offered in a shake, and said, "You're the one." Jesus, I had heard so much about winning America over to Christ. I told the guy I was a Jew and wanted one firm with some give, my tricked back and all, that it should be at least a queen, since maybe I'd find another to love. That seemed to reach him. He told me what the Lord had said and asked me to pray with him. I came in to buy a mattress. Will this help? He assured me it would, and I got down on my knees on the stiff sisal rug. It felt good to get off my feet. And after a while, I asked if a discount was in the cards. Something really important is going to happen, said the salesman, and praise be, 5 minutes later, I gave him my credit card, bought a combo mattress and box spring, slept like an angel that night. Here's In It for the Carpentry, which was influenced a bit by Diane Seuss. I thought I saw a goldfinch pluck a lie from an evangelical's mouth, perhaps like the 17-year brood ex-cicadas, the time for swarming is now. I'd restore my rocks and shells to our lacerated planet, but won't live long enough to return to their origin, to be rescued or not. Imagine camels in our pre-Adamic hemisphere, eggshell fragments in a dinosaur nest, the terra Cretaceous remains from Hell Creek, Montana. Calculating how long since attending a wake, what might be needed is the cleansing offered by funerals. There's no confusion facing a suddenly raging arroyo, only a scramble to higher ground. Capitalizing on the lethal virus, 7 million deaths and counting, an influencer's line of face masks sold out in hours. As Miro said, meaning comes later. On Bridge Street, there's forever a fish crow cawing hoarsely by the liquor store, following a raven over Taos Mountain at the outset of our 21st century and wandering into the Adobe Inn. Frank Morgan was blowing Monk's Well You Needn't. A bebop epiphany in a hip-hop world. Of course it's all madness. I want to be awake when I die. And the last poem is called 9 minutes and 29 seconds. In the first 60 seconds, I kept watch on the towering sugar maple. I counted limbs growing from its trunk and limbs growing from those limbs. I tallied 10. Then there were all the side branches to add. Night air outside the open window was cool with a subtle breeze. In that second minute, twilight showed the contrasting buff and black of a bobolink's head. I wondered how much bend was left in the bow, how it reached toward the risen moon, how it stretched beyond the roof. In the third minute, I saw palm-shaped leaves lengthening, aphids scaling veins. I wondered how much rot infested the bowl if carpenter ants tunneled through the stems. There was a quickening in the fourth minute. Early May fireflies lit up the street and the multi-lobed leaves began to breathe. The sound was deafening. In the fifth minute, a garter snake coiled around the tree's base, then slithered through a thicket of saplings. I saw it flick its forked, black-tipped red tongue. I saw it retract it. In the sixth minute, a sapsucker began its rhythmic drumming. Loosened bark dropped to the grass. Scolding house wrens rattled when a red-tailed shadow passed over. In the seventh minute, a spider was taken by a sparrow. Wind came up and the maple's dense crown waved like cornstalks. Patches of blue sky slipped like ice through the night in the eighth minute. Then the ninth minute, when there were no longer any minutes, not the minute before or the second after, not the first spring migrant, not the last blooming aster. Suffocation, nothing o'clock. For 9 minutes and 29 seconds, we watched the man cuffed and pinned to the pavement, repeating over and over, I can't breathe. We heard him call for his mama, the full weight of a cop on his neck. The man's breath extinguished. Thank you.
Thank you, Howie. I feel silly that I didn't get the reference to 9 minutes, 23 seconds, but boy, you bring us there and it's a surprise because even if I'd thought of it, it's really amazing how that works with the minutes ticking by and nothing o'clock. Also loved a lot of other things like Nero's meaning comes later and the cleansing offered by funerals and the humor of the customer wanting to pray with the speaker. I came in to buy a mattress. Will this help? Thanks so much. We have, last but not least, Adrie Rose.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I want to give a huge thank you to all the people who have read and Becky for bringing us together and everyone who's here listening, and most of all, Ellen for holding us in this space together. So I am going to read from my chapbook that just came out, which is called I Will Write a Love Poem through Porkbelly Press. And this is a series of poems that all share the same title, so they're all called I Will Write a Love Poem. I'm having trouble making sense of being alive when the morgues have seeped out into the streets and bodies are stacked like photos printed then left in a closet. This is not a poem. Don't worry, I know. I go on long bike rides every day on the bike path with headphones in, listen to the histories I was not taught, though my sweetheart says it's dangerous. When I say, why is it dangerous? He says, you can't hear what's coming. I say, it's a bike path. What could be coming? This is what it's like. We can't hear what's coming. Also, we know exactly what is coming. Bodies like a confusion of wheat stalks mounded to enter the thresher's mouth. I kiss him. This is all I remember how to want. To put my headphones in and ride. And just one more. I will write a love poem. On the playground outside, a parent sings, come follow, follow me, off key and wobbly, like the child coming up the hill. I remember how it was to hold a small foot in my hand, dusty bird briefly captured, and sing, cobbler, cobbler, mend my shoe. tapping the toes to hold their interest just long enough to tug the laces shut. I remember all the spells I sang to ensorcel them, to brush their teeth, to leave the house, to enter the house, to click shut the straps on the car seat as they bucked and bellowed to get out. At night, each song a bright rope to hold as they traveled into sleep and returned. And who sang to me? Who kept me stunned and glamored to read the news each day and still open the door, singing to the tiny face beside me, morning has broken, and mean that it was whole.
Thanks, Adrie. I love that last line there. And just the whole thing of attempting to talk about the pandemic and having it become a love poem is so brilliant, especially the images and the whole thinking about you can't hear what's coming. This is all I remember is how to want. Yeah, and the list of reasons to sing and each song a bright rope to hold. Lovely, lovely. So many good stories and poems today. Thank you, everyone.
Ellen, sorry to interrupt you. So Joan is here now, and so I'm thinking we could give her a spot to read. So Joan Livingston.
Okay.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm late. Some real life came in and it's kind of a little bit fuzzy here. I'm sorry. The lighting isn't very good in my room. I was very fortunate to have 2 books published last year. Northern Comfort, which is one of my Hilltown books, and I'm going to read from that book. I also did Missing the Deadline, which is number 7 in my Isabel Long mystery series, came out. That's only in Kindle, and that'll be out in March in paperback. But I want to read from Northern Comfort, which is about the haves and have-nots in a small town. Willie Miller does her best by her young son, Cody, who was brain damaged at birth. They live in a cabin left to them by the grandfather who took them in when Junior Miller abandoned them. And then one day, Cody's sled takes him into this path of a truck driven by Miles Potter, a man of means. I'm going to read from the very first chapter called Worst of Winter. Snow seeped through a crack in her right boot. Cold numbed her toes. She should put duct tape over the brown rubber, but it was her only pair, and it looked like hell. Hey, Cody, where are you going? Her boy marched with fast little feet past the junk truck to the back of their house, where his sled, a cheap thing she bought, was propped against the wall. This is a red sled, she told Cody in the hardware store. Her boy uttered a sound that might have been red, but only she would know. She understood his ways most of the time. He wanted things tick-tock regular, what he ate, what he wore. Her eyes followed her boy, dragging his sled, grunting toward her. He dropped it at her feet and sat inside. The heels of his boots kicked up and down. Ma, he called. Willie sighed. Cody wouldn't let up until she gave him a ride. Her boy liked it when she towed him in his sled along the driveway to get the mail. He made happy chirps and flapped his mittens. She wiped her hands on her black jacket, a man's, too big, and open in the front because the zipper was broken. Its bottom swayed against her legs as she walked. All right, Cody, but just a little ride. She reached for the tow rope and pulled Cody in a large circle. His mouth formed a wide, sloppy smile, and he let out gleeful sounds as Willie went slowly, then gained speed. Her feet sank through the snow, although the sled glided easily on its surface. She was careful to stay on the flat part of her land, away from the edge of its tabletop, where it plunged onto her neighbor's property, then to one of the town's main roads below. When she squinted, she could see the Mercy River flowing through its snowy valley like a blue vein on a woman's wrist. Round and round Willie towed her son. She slipped on the packed ring of snow, and her straight yellow hair dropped to her jaw when her knit cap fell. Cody's head rocked back as he yelped in pleasure. After a while, she stopped, out of breath. I gotta finish hanging the clothes before it gets dark, all right? She told Cody, although she did not expect his answer. She picked her hat from the snow. The sun was low in the sky, and the dark smudge spreading from the west likely carried more snow. Willie frowned. It'd be too much trouble to take the clothes down again. She hated this part of winter. Mid-January, it snowed every day, not much, but enough to keep the road crews going with their plows and sanders. Winter always has a week like this, unsettled weather, the worst of the season, of the year, as far as she was concerned. Often it happened after the thaw, so that brief warm spell seemed like one cruel joke. She bent for one of Cody's shirts. She had to work faster because the clothes were stiffening inside the basket. After she hung them, they would freeze into thin slabs, like shale, and after a day or two, they'd be dry. If she had any money, she'd buy a dryer. She glanced toward her house and saw missing clapboards. She'd fix those too. When she was a girl, she used to keep a mental list of what she'd get if she were rich. Stuff like pink high heels and a long white coat. None of them seemed practical for a town like Haywood, where half the roads were dirt and fancy things were in other people's houses. Now she'd buy a car that worked without worry and hire a lawyer to make her ex-husband, Junior, pay child support. Her boy bucked his body while he lay on his belly inside the sled, wailing as if he were wounded. Willie shook her hands and grabbed a pair of jeans from the basket. Shit, I hate this life, she said. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Glad you got her in time.
Yeah, so sorry.
I just love how you capture and give us a picture of this child with happy chirps and a wide, sloppy smile. The sloppy really does a lot of work there. And also the whole business of the laundry, how the clothes would freeze into slabs and then be dry in like a day or two. It really gives us a sense of what this woman is living with.
I've done that before myself.
Okay, a lot, it works. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm so sorry I'm late.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps up our evening. Thank you, Ellen.
You're welcome.
For being such an amazing listener. And thank you to everybody for all of your reading, for all your extraordinary books, all the audience members. You can look at that chat. You can save it also if you want that information. And please keep in touch with Straw Dogs. And if you'd like to be on our mailing lists or know of upcoming events, check us out on the web. Thank you, Becky, for everything you do.